All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks and Game Time. It's Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth to break down the Patriots Week 15 defeat to the Arizona Cardinals, 30-17. Barth, I feel like we've seen that football game a lot this year from the New England Patriots, where it's non-competitive. Drake Maye has some flashes on offense. Christian Gonzalez has some flashes on defense. We go to the post game. Well, we weren't there because it was a road game, but Gerard Mayo gets up to the microphone. He puts his foot in his mouth a couple times. He gets on with us Monday morning and then the radio, and he has to walk back and clarify his comments. So 30-17 loss, 3-11 on the year. We got 3 games left, which the next week against Buffalo just got flexed to 4:30 for whatever reason. The nation and the world needs more New England Patriots football in a more prominent hour of their lives. But that game, as always, we'll start with the coaching staff. We'll start with Gerard Mayo because he did have some of those comments that we will discuss. Where are you at with him? Because this was, off the bye. Let's end strong. Let's build some momentum going into the offseason. The opposite of that occurred. So where are you at with Gerard Mayo?
Yeah, exactly what you just said, Brian. I mean, this whole year was about, are they better at the end than they were at the beginning? That's what this whole year was about. And even if they didn't have a great start, if you showed you were building towards something, momentum heading into 2025, that's what you're selling people on. And all right, like progress is, Rome wasn't built in a day. Progress is slow. Yeah, maybe we only won 4 or 5 games, but hey, look, 2 of those wins are in December and January, and we're, trending in the right direction. This was not that. This was regression in a game that, as much as any other on their schedule, they should have been able to build in. I thought the Colts game was one of their best games of the year. And then you have the bye week, you have the extra week off. So it's like, okay, they took a step forward. And the Colts game wasn't perfect by any means. It wasn't. But they took a step forward. Now you have 2 weeks against a team in Arizona that had lost 3 in a row out of their bye, had not been good, a team that traditionally fades down the stretch. And it's like, all right, here's a chance to make a statement, because the statement's not going to come in these last 3 games. The Bills and Chargers are too good. So this was their chance to pick up some of that momentum, and they couldn't do it. And when I still, if I'm just predicting what's going to happen with Gerard Mayo, I still don't know. I definitely think there's a much greater possibility now of him getting one and done than I did before this game. I part of me still operates on like the way that he was talked about when he was hired, and they didn't even have a coaching search. Like that just lends the idea that, okay, like he'll be back because they believe in him, even if the results weren't there this year. But if they do make the move, this Cardinals game is going to be a big part of it, because if it gets down to the end of the year, if the year gets over and they go back and look at it, this should have been the game for him and any other coach on the staff to point to and say, we were making progress. Like, let us keep going. We were making progress. And that progress wasn't there in this game based on the way they performed, based on the way they were prepared with an extra week. I find it tough to see if that progress is coming against these next 3 games, 2 opponents, whatever you want to call it. So we'll see we'll see. We'll see. But if Gerard Mayo is one and done, I think this game in particular is going to be one you look back at as a driving reason why that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it. We've said it a lot this year, and you said it again there at the start. Like, this whole year was building. We knew the record wasn't going to be great with the roster they have, the talent they have after, going 4-13 last year, even adding Drake to this. We knew it wasn't going to be a playoff contender all of a sudden, but you wanted to improve as the season goes on. And that hasn't happened. They're still making these same mistakes that they were making earlier in the season. And, no matter what the talent level is, if you look unprepared and it's these simple things that are getting messed up, that comes back to Gerard Mayo and the coaching, especially off the bye with that extra week of preparation. So that's been kind of the most disappointing thing is just that it's these same things that are happening over and over and over again that aren't getting corrected, whether it's in game or whether you have, you reset during the week and you say, okay, let's fix these, and go down that checklist. That's not really happening. So I would still operate that Gerard Mayo is getting another year. We heard, I think over the weekend, like Diana Rossini in her notebook said like Kraft was giving some reassurances behind the scenes that Mayo would be back. Schefter was on Pat McAfee this morning and kind of made it sound like, Kraft wanted to give him Mayo another year as well. But these are the type of performances that maybe could give them some pause, right? You saw,
Right.
and to be fair, it was like a 4-second cutaway after a 5-yard loss, but they did not look happy, Jonathan and Robert Kraft, in the owner's suite up there watching that game yesterday. I'm not a professional lip reader, but it looks like they're talking about something about play calling. And now you look ahead, you have 2 games against the Buffalo Bills. And we were just talking before we came on, like that week 18 game with Patrick Mahomes getting hurt, if the Chiefs lose 1 or 2 down the stretch here, Buffalo could be playing for the 1 seed. So they could be playing their starters week 18. And with the way Josh Allen has been playing, who knows how ugly those are going to get. And then you have a
Right.
Chargers who, really good defense. Justin Herbert's, besides yesterday, was playing good football, and they're kind of fighting for their own playoff spot too. So the last 3 weeks, it could get pretty ugly as well. So do you think would you want the Crafts if they went into this Cardinals game saying we're going to kind of roll with Gerard, we want to give him another shot? Would you want them to, let their decision be impacted by 4 games there, or do you think it would be fair if those 4 games look really bad based off, the first 13 before that? Like it would be fair of them to kind of pull the switch after one and done here.
Um, well, it's not just about the 4 games, right? If they had a solid season and came out with that game, I wouldn't be sitting here saying that game's a fireable offense on it because it's not on its own. It would be weird. I'd still be criticizing the coaching, but it's stat. It's the latest in the long line of examples, right? This was supposed to be the game that turned the tide. Coming into this game, it was like, and I get asked this a lot. I don't know about you, Brian. I get asked this a lot. What's the argument for keeping him? Not in a prediction sense. The argument in a prediction sense is Robert Kraft seems to genuinely like him and believe in him. And why he is, you'd have to ask him that. Like he talked about it, just the people person skills and that. He talked about that back in January, right? So I guess we know. But that's the argument for why are they going to keep him if we're doing the prediction game? Why? What's the football reason for it? And it was supposed to be, well, they started building momentum late in the year. And this was the game to do that, and they didn't do it.
And his defense. That would be the other thing, right? Like he's a defensive guy. If that defense that was top 10 in football last year continued on that kind of same trajectory, right? Like you build that defense. Right. And that obviously has fallen off a cliff now, even though they had Christian Gonzalez all year. They got Jabril Peppers back recently. They got Christian Barmore back recently. Yep. And that defense has still kind of fallen off. I will say, like, it does seem, or maybe not after yesterday. Did you think the players were still playing hard yesterday? Because that's one thing you could point to. If you still think there's buy-in in the locker room and they're still playing hard for Gerard. So did you, I know it's tough for us to sit here and kind of question effort level, but did you think you still saw some buy-in from those guys yesterday?
It's tough, especially when you're not like there. It just tracks different in person. I mean, certainly from some guys, the running backs ran hard. 100 of 118 yards came after contact, according to PFF. I think you saw it from some. Gonzalez obviously played his ass off. Like, are there some guys that you're maybe getting lesser than from? Yeah, you see it in the tackling effort. You see it in the line of scrimmage. It's also hard to tell because, like, Vidarian Lowe gets blown by twice in 2 plays early in that game, and that was a big sequence. Is that a lack of effort thing, or like because that's just sort of who Vidarian Lowe is, and then you go to the roster talent of it all. I guess if you're going to talk about that, I'd go to the Kayshon Boutte comment after the game, talking about Drake May's throw being low, hitching both hands, like read the field, know to sit down in the zone. I would go more to that than maybe anything we saw on the field.
And we can get into Booty later. I'm done with him on the field. Like he's giving you nothing on the field, but we'll talk about him with the offense a little bit later. But with Gerard, I did, and maybe some of these potential changes that could happen. I did want to, talk about the infamous 5 words in his post game press conference that really was the talking point the last 24 hours here. And he was asked. We had that. Excuse me. We had that sequence. To start the second half, they finally put together somewhat of a good drive. They worked down to the red area. 3rd and 1, run up the middle, get stuffed. 4th and 1, they go for it, run up the middle, get stuffed. Again, he was asked, Mayo, after the game, if that would be an area where they would consider using Drake Maye's legs, right? Like we've talked a lot about that, getting the design quarterback run game. Anytime we ask Alex Van Pelt about it, that is the exact kind of scenario that he lays out, that they would be willing to do it, right? Like short yardage, important play down near the goal line. Like that is the blueprint for when you think they would do this, and they haven't been. They've been reluctant to do so. So someone asked Mayo that. He said, "You said it, I didn't." That was it. A few questions later, someone followed up, and he came back and he said, "It's always my decision. I would say the quarterback obviously has a good pair of legs and does a good job at running the ball. We just chose not to do it there." He was obviously asked about that this morning, kind of walked it back. He said it was a defensive response. He was just trying to clarify with the follow-up question. He reiterated that the decisions are his. They have these quarterback runs if they want to call them. They just haven't called it yet. So what were your kind of thoughts on that comment? He also said, like, it's all good with him and Van Pelt. He 100% backs Van Pelt. He had a conversation with him this morning about the comments, and Van Pelt didn't even know what he was talking about. So what did you think when you kind of heard that exchange yesterday and then his follow-up this morning with those comments that, looks like, and you can easily make it out, that kind of seems like he's calling out his offensive coordinator there?
So look, I've come on here after, what are we calling these, Mayoisms, whatever they are, the calling team soft, once they cross the white line, all those, right? And I think it's been taken as a defense. That's not always the intention. It's just my way of discussing it. Like, oh, well, I get what he's saying. He shouldn't have said it, but I get what he's saying. Or like, oh, when you add the context, it's not as bad. This one, I have no idea where the hell that came from.
Weird.
I think of all of the press conference gaffes that he's had this year, I think this is the worst one. And I don't think it's particularly close. Like that, I even had to have it like, it took me a minute to register like why everybody was talking about that being him throwing Van Pelt under the bus. It was just an odd comment. It just felt very reactionary, and it's just not great. It's not a great look. It's not. So that one, if I'm him and I could have one of these back this year, that's the one. No question. That was not good.
Yeah. And that's like, just speaking with Gerard, I know it's his first year on the job, but how often do we hear throughout the summer, earlier in the season, like, you don't want to be an error repeater on the field,
Right.
and he just keeps, stepping in it and
Well,
keeps
it's
having
also, it is his first year, and I get that. And I do think that there was a learning process for him with the media early on. But at the same time, it's a cliche in the NFL. You get to this time of year, there are no rookies.
Yeah,
And I think that applies to coaches as well.
definitely. So did that make you, I think we've kind of been
So
on
let me
here.
just add to this, and maybe this is what you're about to ask, but I just want to make this point too. I, although, like I just said, that's the worst press conference F up he's had. I think people are making too big of a deal of it. And what I mean by that is, if they were winning, it would just be some goofy thing he said and nobody would care. Right. And what he's saying in the press conference is, you can argue maybe it has an impact on team morale, but it's not the driving force behind why they're losing. It's not even the driving force behind the coaching issues that are impacting this team right now. Like, Joe Mazzulla goes up there and says wacky stuff at the press conference, and we just kind of laugh it off because the Celtics are a wagon. If they were winning, I wouldn't care. And I just feel like that's kind of been presented today as like a primary issue with the team. Call a play that'll get you a yard on 3rd and 4th and 1 instead of running right behind your rookie left guard who's proven to struggle twice in a row, right? Don't get called for penalty on the opening drive of the game when you're actually building momentum. Get lined up so you don't have to burn it before the 3rd and 4th and 1, so you have to burn a timeout and let the Cardinals kind of get rested and get their legs back under. Yep. These all rank ahead of what he said at the press conference. I understand why we're talking about it. I do think it's relevant. I do understand why it's talked about. That's not the reason, though, for the product on the field. There are tangible coaching issues. Like you talked about the defense. They're getting kind of cut up and down, especially key moments in the game. That reflects on Jerod Mayo. I care a lot more about that than what he's saying at the press conference.
Definitely. On the play call, the 4th and 1, like, I'm not someone who says, like, we need to run Drake Maye double-digit times a game, especially in this season. You know, you're not making the playoffs. There's 3 weeks left. The best thing you can do is get Drake Maye out of here healthy and ending on a positive note. But, like, I don't think it would hurt 1 or 2, especially in those spots, again, that Alex Van Pelt have always said, or even just the threat of it, right? Like, the one time
right,
they kind of threatened it, they had the Antonio Gibson big run, right? Like they kind of have that look like it could be a zone option and make it keep it, and the backside edge who's unblocked, he just takes like one little false step thinking maybe Drake's going to keep this ball, and then that's enough for Antonio Gibson to break 29 yards. So, you know, people say like 4th and 1, you should be able to get a yard. I get that, but also the offensive line is the weakest part of this team, and they just got stuffed 3rd and 1. Like, why not put the ball in Drake's hands, or the threat of Drake Maye's skill set in that situation, and maybe that will, you know, lead to better results. So with that, and I know you just said those comments, you know, maybe not as big of a deal to you than what's going on the field, but does it impact maybe you're standing for Alex Van Pelt going forward? I know we've both been on here saying, you know, he's done a lot of good stuff with Drake Maye. It seems like the offense has been improving. Like, honestly, he's maybe been one of their better coaches, I would say, this year. But do you think that maybe there is a disconnect with Mayo and Van Pelt there? You know, even going back earlier in the season, you know, maybe they were indifferent about, you know, starting Drake Maye and Drake Maye's timeline and, you know, stuff like that. Do you think, does that comment maybe give you a little pause about Van Pelt being back next year? And the Crafts talking, you know, lip reading experts talking about offensive play calling is terrible.
I mean, it would be a shame. Excuse me. I'd hate to see Van Pelt end up the fall guy in this, and like Mayo stays and it's a new offensive coordinator. I think you're spinning your tires there again. Van Pelt hasn't been this like unbelievable offensive coordinator, but I think the job he's done with the personnel he's been given earned him a second year. Now, if you're telling me to bring in a new head coach and the new head coach wants his own offensive coordinator, like that's another conversation. But if it's Mayo stays, Van Pelt goes, I think that would be a mistake. I could see them having disagreements, though. I totally could. Like you said, when it came to starting Drake Maye, it felt like maybe there were some disagreements there, and the reaction. I think what did Jerod Mayo call it this morning when he was asked about it? What was the term he used? Do you remember?
When asked about his quote?
Yeah. Hang on, I know Mike Reese had it. Called it a defensive response.
Yeah.
Right. The defensive response from Jerod Mayo, like that's a kind of gut. It tells me that question maybe hit a nerve about whether or not to run Drake Maye. So yeah, I absolutely could see that there's a disagreement there.
Yep. Again, though, it's tough because it does really feel like Alex Van Pelt has been one of their better coaches this year. And that
I would argue it's him or Scott Peters has been the best coach on the staff. And in
and
some
that's maybe
ways,
a problem within itself because even that hasn't been great.
Sure.
But
in some ways, even if Peters is the best coach, like some of that just goes to Van Pelt. So
yeah.
Again, like if Ben Johnson's like, you know what, I don't want to be a head coach, but I want to go coordinate an offense for Drake Maye. And like, yeah, drop everything. Sure. I'm not saying he's untouchable, but the defense is the bigger issue. So if you're telling me Mayo and Covington are staying and Van Pelt's the fall guy,
that's tough.
Right. Are you going to get an upgrade if that's the move? You might not. Remember Van Pelt was, how many guys did they interview before Van Pelt?
12 of 12 or
last year. Was it 12? Was it that many? I thought it was like 8.
I thought they hit double digits.
Did they? Wow. Okay. Sure. All the more reason. Like, I think I'm not saying he's earned a lifetime contract. Again, I can't stress that enough. Has he earned one more year? Yeah. And if he's the one they move on from, I think that's short-sighted.
Especially just, I feel like he deserves maybe a chance to show it with better personnel too, right?
That's basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the stuff he's shown this year and the work he's done with Drake Maye, out of everyone on, like, he deserves another shot with better
Right.
players, better personnel. And then, as you said, not saying he needs to be tied to Drake May's hip for the rest of his career. I think we've talked about that a lot earlier in the year. Like, maybe Drake Maye outgrows Alex Van Pelt at some point along the line here. Needs a more, exotic, diverse play caller, or creative. That's a good word, like, along the lines. But going on year 2, he deserves another shot. I was trying to pull up their coordinator tracker list. I couldn't find a good one. See how many they did bring in here.
Look, it was a lot, plain and simple. It was a lot, and that tells you, I think, for what the search was. I remember people being, I don't want to say upset, but let down by the names we heard. And Van Pelt came out of nowhere. Like, I think we were live, right? And we didn't even know that they'd interviewed him.
12.
What that was, that it was 12. Okay.
He was 12. Yeah, and we were live. I remember that.
Yeah. Like, for how that search went, they did fine. It certainly could have gone a lot worse.
Yeah.
So
it was Nick Caley, Zach Robinson, Dan Pitcher, who stayed with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Shane Waldron, which that was a mess when he went to Chicago. Gerard Johnson, the Texans.
Yeah, that was my guy. I liked him.
Quarterback coach. Did he stay in Houston?
I think so, because he stayed with
Slowick. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's their passing game coordinator too.
That would make sense.
Thomas
Brown,
he's still with the Texans.
Thomas Brown, who is now the Bears interim head coach. Tanner Engstrand, who's the Lions passing game coordinator. Brian Fleury, who's the Niners tight ends coach. Luke Getsy, who also got fired. Clint Kubiak, he stayed in.
I'm pretty sure he's with the Saints.
Oh yeah, he got the OC job in the Saints,
right? Because he came from San Francisco. Yeah.
Scott Turner, who I think is still in Vegas with just like a vague job, and then
he is the interim offense coordinator for the Raiders.
That's it. Okay. So yeah, Van Pelt was 12.
So I would say Kubiak obviously would have been great, although that offense has kind of fallen off. But Kubiak was good in New Orleans before everybody got hurt. Besides him, not counting the guys who stayed, the guys who took new jobs, where would you rank Van Pelt?
It's like Zach Robinson, Shane Waldron.
Didn't Zach Robinson stay?
No, he went to Atlanta.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I mean, Getsy and Waldron got fired, so they're out. Thomas Brown, it's kind of tough because he was like passing game coordinator, and then he was an interim coordinator for like 2 weeks, and now he's an interim head coach. So it's really, Zach Robinson and Van Pelt, right? Those are the only,
and Kubiak.
Yeah. Kubiak, Van Pelt. So,
and I'd say with Kubiak and Robinson, both of them, they had 2 of the best offenses in the league through the first month, and then
kind of faded.
They've both fallen off. I mean, Kirk Cousins might get benched. Zach Robinson might get the big free agent signing quarterback benched here. That could happen tonight. The Saints had a bunch of injuries, and it still looks good schematically with Kubiak. Kubiak's probably the best of that group.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Van Pelt, I'd say Van Pelt's better than the majority of the guys on that list. Ended up being a better hire than the majority of the guys on that list probably would have been.
Yeah. I think the most intriguing ones are the guys who stayed, honestly.
So. I mean, the guys who stayed, those were but they stayed because they know that they are quality hires and they're not going to rush, and they want to make sure they end up in the right spot. And that's why they stayed.
Yep.
Same reason with the head coaches. That's why Ben Johnson stayed.
Definitely. All right. Anything else? Any other coaching staff thoughts there, or anything else with Mayo?
I think that's pretty much it.
All right. Let's get into a little bit of the game. And before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Prize Picks, where you just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash on America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Barth and I submit our Patriots lineup every game day, and you can join in and make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks. As again, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. And join now because the holiday season on Prize Picks, they're giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. We have 2 Monday night games tonight. You just said the Falcons are playing, so Falcons taking on the Raiders. Desmond Ridder revenge game, and then we have Bears Vikings in the NFC North to start earlier. So lots of action, 4 teams to put in your Prize Picks lineups tonight. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. You want to start with that defense or Drake Maye in the offense? Any preference?
I guess we usually start with the offense. We can start with the offense.
Offense. All right. 17 points. It took really till garbage time there at the end to get 2 late touchdowns. 0 for 6 on 3rd down. A lot of that, I think, had to stem from the offensive line. We'll talk about the lone bright spot in Drake and maybe the running backs too. But the offensive line, especially the left side with Vidarian Lowe, as we talked about, Layden Robinson, again, wasn't great. Ben Brown, I think we jinxed Ben Brown on the preview show.
Yeah, clearly.
How good he's been and his snaps and everything, because his PFF pass blocking grade was 0.0 yesterday, and he had 2 bad snaps. So the offensive line, kind of a disaster there. Does that open the door, do you think, for Cole Strange to work in to the lineup, who wasn't ready to go? He wasn't active on the game day roster yesterday, but do you think that opens the door for Cole Strange to get in here the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, probably. Look, I said last week I'd like to keep Ben Brown for the continuity. I stand by that. But if he can't get the ball back to the quarterback, there's no point in having him in the lineup. And I think the coaching staff got what they want. Now, look, Layden Robinson did not have a good game either, and that's covered up because you don't see it like you see the bad snaps. But he gets blown up big time on, I forget which one it was, on one of those 3rd, 4th, and 1s. He did get beat on the other, not as cleanly, but he did. So it's a pick 'em, but they clearly want him at center, and they clearly want Layden Robinson in the lineup. So I think we see Cole Strange at center next week.
Yeah. Layden was the 3rd and 1. He got beat easily.
Yeah.
He also had the hold on the first drive
Yeah.
that negated a 15-yard gain on 3rd down, and then that leads to the field goal that they missed. He should have got called for another hold on one of Gibson's other runs, but they didn't call it. So still not great there. They really, Cole Strange can fill in one of those 2. They don't have a backup tackle. They go into these games with like City So as their backup tackle, unless they're gonna kick Mike Onwenu out and move Trey Jacobs over. Like, they really can't do anything about Vidarian Lowe. And he wasn't great again yesterday. He had those back-to-back plays, the run stuff, and then he gave up the sack, which I thought Drake Maye was almost going to strip sack again with how that's been going, but he held on to the football. So they really don't have anything they can do about Vidarian Lowe unless Caden Wallace goes to right and they move Trey Jacobs over to the left, or God forbid they just put Caden Wallace back at left tackle, which I hope they don't do at this point. But yeah, it's the offensive line still is just, the Achilles heel kind of this offense. And you saw that again yesterday.
Yeah, they just don't have the personnel. And for all we talked about coaching, at the end of the day, they don't have the talent to run some of this stuff. So I'm with you. There's nothing they can do about Lowe. The tackle problem remains. Now, the guy that they probably should have been more invested in the offseason, he scored a touchdown yesterday because, of course, he did, because it's exactly how the season is gone. But that
was perfect.
It really was. Even before I was, watching a game with a buddy, and I see a Cardinals lineman jump on the ball, and they originally called it out of bounds, and I just go, "That's that." I was like, "That's going to be in bounds, and it's going to be him. Like, it's going to be." Why am I blanking on his name?
Jonah Williams.
Jonah Williams. Thank you. I'm like, that's in, and it's Jonah Williams, and he's going to get a touchdown because, of course, he is. Where was Chukwu for? Meanwhile, yesterday, we don't know. But yeah, it was. They just don't own the bodies. They don't have the horses up front, and it showed up again.
Yep. And it's clearly impacting their game plan because, again, we can go to Drake Maye, all underneath, right? Like his average depth of target in the first half was negative. I think he threw seven or eight passes at or behind the line of scrimmage.
10 passes, none more than 5 yards downfield in the first half.
And to his credit, he was money. He was 17 of 17, under 10 yards, 10 air yards. But you just see how that kind of puts the restrictions on this offense. They come out first play of the second half, play action shot. He probably shouldn't have thrown it to Booty, but I think he was probably just like, F this. We need to air it out. I'm going to chuck it down there to Booty. He ended up throwing 6 passes over 10 yards. He only completed 2 of them. He sailed one. He had one bad miss to Booty on that kind of crosser where he rolled out of the pocket to his right and missed him. But accurate 80% completion, over 80% completion for the second straight game. You're still seeing, the good stuff underneath. They can't get that deep passing game unlocked, though, partly due to the offensive line, due to the receivers. He did have the one beauty to Kendrick Bourne kind of late in the game. No turnover-worthy plays, second straight week. He's done that as well. He did have the interception, which was off kind of Booty's hands there. But what'd you think of Drake's game as a whole there yesterday?
I thought for what the game was, he probably did as well as he can. Again, they were very limited. Was it general conservativeness from Alex Van Pelt? That's probably part of it. I also think they saw what the offensive line was. Vidarian Lowe gets blown by twice early on, and just were like, we're not going to be able to block it. These guys aren't going to have time to get down the field, and kept it locked in. But for what that was, like you said, didn't put the ball in harm's way. Had one spray miss on that play. He's rolling right. He had Kayshon Boutte. Haven't seen a spray from him in a few weeks. They were a bigger problem early on. You look at it, you just kind of hope like, all right, they're going to happen here and there. Just don't let it become regular again. But for what it was, he was fine. The bigger plays are in garbage time, like you said. I'm not drooling over that game, but I don't think he was good or bad. He was just kind of there.
Yep. Do you hope these last 3 weeks they kind of play, and they might have to because they might be trailing, but they play more like they did in the fourth quarter of putting the ball in kind of Drake's hands? And I know like they might be terrified of just blocking for him, but do you hope they kind of just open it up and let Drake cook and let Drake kind of compete, like keep them in these games down the stretch instead of these, short, efficient, under 10-yard passes where you kind of have to march these long drives together, and you see like the longer they're on the field, something bad is going to happen with a penalty and kind of shoot themselves in the foot. So do you hope they kind of play more like they did late and let Drake kind of air it out, or is the offensive line just really going to restrict them that much?
Yeah, that last part, like it'd be great to kind of let Drake Maye open it up against these elite defenses and get him the experience. I think they will to an extent, but the last thing he needs is him getting hurt right now. So I wouldn't go too over the top with it.
All right. The only other bright spot I really had on offense was the running backs. It was a good game from Ramondre, ran well. Antonio Gibson only played 16 snaps, but he broke 11 total tackles, had 3 gains of 10 plus yards. He's still one of their most explosive playmakers, so I'd like to see more of him still going down the stretch. Anything from them or the receivers, tight ends from that skill position yesterday?
I like you said earlier on Kayshon Boutte, that was kind of my big takeaways. Like he had that little surge midway through the season. It was great. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, he'll be back next year in camp and we'll see. And I'm sure there will be people that will point to those games and say he's an option, but he's nothing like I'm not counting on him for anything more than like maybe he's that 5th or 6th guy that you're kind of mixing in every once in a while to just give a different look. Like Demario Douglas should be part of what your base set in 11s. Kendrick Bourne can be. He's a player that can be upgraded, but, he's kind of right on that line. That's it. I don't think you're counting on Jalen Polk to be a regular part of the offense, which sucks. As a second, it's unfortunate that your second-round pick a year in, you're writing him off already. But when you look at the numbers and you look at the historical context of guys that start like this, they generally don't turn it around. Javon Baker is a total wild card. He may not be on the team next year, honestly. So you're looking for one, if not two more guys in that base 11 personnel in the wide receiver room. I don't think Kayshon Boutte's an answer there.
Yeah. I don't like to make it seem like we're picking on Polk, but like it feels
Right.
like you can almost write him in every week for 20 snaps, 1 target, and 0 catches. That's just what it is now. Like that's been a trend these last few weeks or really season. And at this point, like he would be a complete total outlier if he turns it around and has, a solid NFL career at that wide receiver.
I mean, look, like what are his numbers for the year again? Do you have them in front of you?
I think like 12.
You're just kind of reading it off.
Have 12 catches.
He has 12 catches for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. That is still half of N'Keal Harry's most productive season.
That's tough.
So, yeah, I mean,
He's got 2 catches for 9 yards since Halloween. So,
yes.
Yeah, it would be an outlier at this point if he can turn it around.
He has 2 targets since Halloween.
2 targets since Halloween. Hey, he's catching 100% of his
Nice. Sorry, 3 targets. Oh, no, I was reading that. I was in the wrong column. He has a bunch of targets since Halloween. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 targets since Halloween.
Okay. 2 for 9, baby. 2 for 9. So yeah, who knows what that's gonna look like. With Boutte though, like they completed both. I tweeted this morning. They completed him and Maye. They connected on their first 2 deep shots. The one in Houston at the end of the half. He had the one the following week in London against Jacksonville. And they're 0 for 8 since in their last 6 games. And I get it. Like he's not an outside receiver. That's kind of where he has to play, but he's just not giving you anything. The one target, he's open. He ends up basically lateraling it to the defense for an interception. He's wearing coverage on the outside. Then he goes in the locker room after and he says it's disrespectful that the Cardinals were playing man coverage in the first quarter. Like, why do you think they were playing man coverage? Maybe because they're not worried about Patriots' top wide receiver in terms of snap count beating them in man coverage, and that's Kayshon Boutte. So I'm at the point where if Javon Baker is out of concussion protocol and healthy these last 3 weeks, just play him. I know it's not going to be pretty probably either. He's going to have some issues, but you're getting issues with Kayshon Boutte, so why not just see what you have in Javon Baker out there at his more natural position too, at the X on the outside, and just see what you have in Javon Baker over these last 3 games if he's healthy and ready to go out of.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just don't think the coaching staff trusts putting him on the field right now,
which is unfortunate because the guy they are putting out there isn't giving you much anyway. So, any last thoughts there on the offense, or we can turn it over to what's maybe even worse on the defensive side of the ball?
The running backs ran hard. I kind of talked about it earlier. Most of their yards coming after contact. It's kind of like early in the year where they created in spite of the offensive line. Antonio Gibson continues to look really good. You want to talk about one guy that's building momentum into 2025, it's Gibson. And he should have a bigger role here over these last 3 games.
Definitely. All right, before we go over to the defense very quickly, I just want to talk to you guys about Game Time. We all love going to sporting events live, whether it's football games, hockey, basketball, baseball, spring training right around the corner. We can get all of our tickets on the Game Time app, college football playoffs too, if you want to go to that. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier because they filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you want to go to Patriots at Bills at Highmark Stadium this upcoming weekend, again, $425 now on Sunday. $114 is the cheapest get-in on Game Time. You can also use that Game Time Picks app and move down to the second level for $141. Oh, even first level, they have $141 on Game Time. And then week after that, maybe a Saturday game, is those Mike Reese rumors saying.
That's the rumbling.
Chargers at Patriots, Justin Herbert versus Drake May. The league might want to show that game out at Gillette Stadium. $40 is the cheapest get-in right now on the Game Time app. Back-to-back home games to end the year. Bills then come into town. So make sure you head to Game Time for their lowest price guaranteed and other in-app features such as seat views, all-in pricing, and, of course, Game Time Picks which makes it even easier to save more on sports and any other tickets you are looking for, such as concerts, comedy, theater, or anything else. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Going over to the defense. Wasn't pretty. Again, 30 points allowed. Cardinals just felt like they could get anything they wanted on the ground game, even though, if you take out the 56-yard run, the numbers, look pretty solid there.
All right, just on that real quick, even if we are going to do that exercise, which, no, the run happened. It was a major play in the game. You can't take it out. But for the sake of the exercise, Cardinals running back still combined average 4 yards per carry. That's not a ton, but that's pretty solid. Like, you take that. Yeah, it's still not very good, even when you take that run out.
If you take it out, it was, and even with the run, it kind of felt like the Colts game where they're not, breaking off these long runs consistently, but they're just picking up 5, 6, 4, 7 yards, and they're keeping their offense ahead of schedule. And that's what, killed the Patriots. They gave up 10 third downs. The Cardinals went 10 of 15 on third down. Most of those were, third medium, third and short, because they had that run game going. So they were easy conversions. So they killed them. And that's, seems to be one of the most disappointing things with the Patriots defense, just like all year in the red area on third down. Like, they just can't get off the field when they need it the most. And a lot of it seems to be like the veteran players too, like Kyle Duggar, not a great game. Jelani Tavai, Jabril Peppers taking bad pursuit angles, giving up. He was on the scene for that big run. So it's some of the veterans. And that to me is like one of the most disappointing things with this defense kind of throughout the year. And you saw it again there in Arizona.
Yeah, it's the situational stuff, struggling late, because it didn't feel like a game because we've watched this team all year and we kind of know how they operate late in games. But that was a game relatively late, and the defense couldn't get a key stop when it needed to. There's no semblance of a pass rush. This was another game. I think, Brian, you were the one who made this reference after the Jaguars game where they didn't get a hit on Trevor Lawrence. You can send the jersey back to the pro shop and nobody would know the difference. It's another one of those games. Didn't get a hit on Kyler Murray. Didn't really pressure him. And I know he's mobile, but PFF had them down for 7 pressures, which just watching the game felt high. And outside of Gonzalez, there aren't a lot of answers right now.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it kind of was a game. Like, they scored Pat's Pat scored the touchdown. They were down 13 with 8 minutes left. So if you get a 3 and out, right, like you get some momentum, and then the Cardinals go 9 plays, 70 yards, they kill almost 5 minutes of clock. And then it's pretty much over at that point, nail in the coffin. You're down 20 with 5 minutes left. So tough. The situations, it just hasn't been there all year. You did mention Christian Gonzalez. He is the one bright spot on defense throughout the year. He really put the clamps on Marvin Harrison Jr. Throughout the game. He had a couple pass breakups in the end zone, just, textbook, perfect coverage, playing the hands, getting in there, tight coverage. He even had one, like, he got beat on the early pick route, and then they tried to run it again later, and he was just in Marvin Harrison's pocket. So awesome game from him. We saw a little bit of that corner rotation too with Alex Austin, Nose Bolden. Did you like that? And did you like Gonzalez's game, and what you see from the secondary?
Gonzalez was excellent. Gonzalez was, I mean, that's high level. And by the way, and not that Marvin Harrison's bad. He faced a great corner, but where are all the don't take a quarterback, you have to take MHA? Oh, he's generational. You can't pass on a guy like that. I don't care what you need.
He is
saying that the Drake Maye pick was obvious. Took too many calls, too many questions on Marvin Harrison Jr. for that pick to be called. It was obvious. Too many to me. Too many. The pick was obvious. It was Drake Maye. Not to everybody. Not to a significant portion of the fan base who wanted their shiny new toy at wide receiver. Anyway, I thought Gonzalez was great. Meanwhile, the safeties, Kyle secondary. I don't know, the Cardinals don't have a ton of other wide receivers like Greg Dortch. They should take notes on Greg Dortch. The Patriots should, for how to use Demario Douglas. I thought the bigger issues, the tight ends, Trey McBride getting up and down the field, and then just the lack of tackling from the safeties. Obviously, Kyle Duggar missed that big one over the middle. He's still not right. I think it's the ankle. It's got to be there.
It has to be
For him to fall off this extremely that quickly. Like you really just don't see that. You don't see it. So I think it's the ankle. Jabril Peppers took a couple bad angles as well. He had an atrocious angle on the long run that if you could take away, if you take that away, I thought Peppers played an okay game, but he took a bad angle on that one. And maybe, just getting back in the swing of things after missing a lot of time.
Yeah, he's still probably working his way back a bit.
Really rough game for the safeties in this one.
Yeah.
And Jalen Hawkins continues to not make much of an impact.
Yeah, I don't think he played a defensive snap yesterday, which we're talking about playing the young guys like Marte Mapu not active again. I don't know. They're playing Del Pettis over him. They have Jalen Hawkins active over him, and he's not even playing defensive snaps. It was strictly special teams. So seems like that was like maybe a communication from the Dolphins game with Mapu because we haven't seen him since. But, another one of those young guys that can't get on the field. Duggar, I saw some people saying, like, could they eat his contract after this year, the extension they just gave him? I think they're going to have to at least one more year. I did look it up. Like if you cut him before the 6-1, it's like a 23 million cap hit and you don't save any money. If you do it after, like it's like 4.5 dead cap, 9 next year, and you save. Oh no, that's a trade. It was like 14 dead cap this year and 9 next year. So they're probably going to have to wait one more year to at least get out of that one. So hopefully it is just the ankle and, you can take care of it during the offseason. He gets back and looks better. But yeah, it has been a steep kind of and quick drop off for Kyle Duggar there in that secondary. But
yeah,
I think that was all I had for defense. Just speaking of the tackling too, like Taki and Tavai in that same boat. But anything else you have on the defensive side of the football?
I thought there was one other bright spot with Gonzalez, and that was Christian Ellis. Obviously had the open field tackle on Kyler Murray. That got a lot of attention, made another nice open field tackle earlier. He was hustling down the field. We talked earlier about, our players still playing hard. It was Ellis hustling down the field to tackle James Conner on that long run. If he doesn't hustle, that's probably a touchdown. So I don't know that he's the answer at linebacker, but as a depth linebacker who can play special teams, like he should have a role. That's a guy I'd bring back. That's a guy that I think is a nice piece to have.
Yeah. That linebacker position is quickly rising. I know a lot of positions are rising up the list of offseason needs, but that is getting up there. They need someone to play like a full-time role next to Juwan Bentley. And, Bentley's obviously had his injury concerns too. So someone who you're confident to be like the guy on that second level if Juwan Bentley goes out too. So there's some good options in free agency, and the draft will obviously be talking about that pretty much soon. But that is the defense. We'll wrap up very quickly with special teams. Another missed kick from Joey Sly. Are we going to get John Parker Romo here, the kicker they signed to the practice squad, who traveled with the team to Arizona? Mike Reese pointed that out. Do you think we could see him over these last 3 games? Now that Sly missed another kick, it was 53 yards, but that's his thing. He's got the big leg. Could we see a kicker change down the stretch here?
The way they've kind of talked about wanting to see guys for the future, I could see it, because I think the idea is, all right, is Parker Romo a guy we're going to bring in to compete for this job next year? We're going to do kickers in the draft. Like, to me, that position's wide open. So if you can get a look at the guy, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And I don't think there was anything else very noticeable in special teams, right?
No, Brendan Schooler had a nice tackle on punt coverage.
Jaheim Bell made another play, who Jeremy Springer wanted to give Jaheim Bell his flowers before the game. He was asked, like, if there's one player who's been pressed, and he said Jaheim Bell. So he made another nice play.
He has been good on special teams, yeah.
Yeah. So, but kind of a quieter day in that department besides the missed kick there. So we'll see if there's a potential change. Springer he did say he played the card when we asked him on Friday. Like, he played the card more of, they just want to take some wear and tear off Sly down the stretch, in practice. But he's missed 7 kicks now. So maybe they do make a change there, and we'll see with Parker Romo. But Any other closing thoughts from you? Anything, coaching staff, or any other last notes about that game?
I think that's pretty much it.
All right, so we will wrap it up there. We have the Bills to preview. I think we're going to do that Wednesday night. So Patriots going to Buffalo, Week 16. Three more games left, and then the fun stuff starts with off season, free agency, draft, and we can get into some of the good stuff. But three more. We'll be back. Patriots Press Pass Wednesday night to preview that. In the meantime, you can follow Barth on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for his Patriots coverage over there. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com for our Patriots coverage there as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us tonight, and we will see you guys later this week.